Please welcome Scott Birkin.
Okay. All right. First object is to obtain the clicker. I now have the clicker. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about innovation and creative thinking. And my background on the subject, I've been studying innovation for a long time. I've worked in the tech sector for a long time. And I wrote a book about innovation called The Myths of Innovation. And doing research for that book, I spent a lot of time going back and trying to understand how did all the great inventors and innovators throughout history do what they did. Not the legends, not the mythologies that we think about what they did, but what did they actually do? What did they have to say about what they were doing when they did it? And one of the things that comes up when we dig into these stories is there's so much attention that's usually paid to the moment when these things are discovered. And even today with startup companies and new technologies, whenever someone is interviewed for doing something that's called innovative, one of the questions they always get asked is, where were you when you had the first thought? What time of day was it? What were you wearing? What was going on? And we're obsessed with those kinds of details. We want to know what the essence was, and we believe if we could understand the moment, somehow there'll be something in there that we could copy and emulate and become innovators ourselves. But the problem is that those individual moments, even if they do happen, even if you do have a big insight, they don't tell you very much about how to prepare for that or how to increase the likelihood that you're going to be able to do that by yourself. So it's useful when we think about these icons of innovation. This picture shown here of this light bulb going off is the icon that we use to represent when someone has an idea. Has anybody seen this icon in the last hour? Showed up on the cover of a magazine. It's our metaphor for that moment. And somehow people who are creative or smart get those magic moments more often than other people do. But again, once you know the trivia, you know the detail. Okay, he was at this place, he was wearing this kind of clothes, he had this much alcohol the night before, or whatever. Once you know those details, then what do? Copying that moment doesn't help much. So the first thing you want to do whenever you hear one of these stories about invention or innovation, whether it's about what's going on right now or what's going on in the past, is to say, hold on. If this is the cartoon story, what happened in the cell before? What happened a minute before that moment? An hour before? A week before? A month before? Oh, it wasn't the first time he'd ever thought about this thing. Okay. Oh, he had done a bunch of experiments. Oh, okay. Now all of a sudden you're getting actual useful information. If you're looking for a pattern language for how to be an inventor, that's where that stuff is. It's in what preceded the moment that we tend to fixate on and pay attention to. Also, even better is to go the other way and to say, okay, you had this magic moment. You thought of the first social network. Okay, great. What did you do then? We love to talk about ideas. I love talking about ideas and how to find them and cultivate them and develop them into new things. But the truth is that ideas are lazy. They don't do very much. You could have the best idea, and if you don't go and tell someone else about it, you don't go and promote it or convince someone else to give you money to do it, nothing happens. It doesn't do anything on its own. So whenever you hear one of these stories about, great, you had the insight, you had the idea, magic things happen, what did you do next? What did you do a minute later, 10 minutes later, an hour later? How many people did you have to pitch the idea to? How did you change your pitch each time? How did the insight develop and grow? Those are the questions you want to ask. So this whole thing about the magic moment, it's useful, it's fun, it's entertaining, makes for good movies. Not really a lot of substance, not a lot you can learn about how to replicate those, how to actually become an innovator yourself. Now what's more useful, a much more useful way to think about invention and innovation are the words problems and solutions. To use the words problems and solutions. Talk about what problem you're trying to solve. What approach you're going to take to defining that problem. Now, in the industry, in many industries that focus on creativity, the film industry, the design industry, advertising industry, they talk a lot about blue sky thinking. We're going to think blue sky. Our executive is giving us a budget to reinvent the company. We're going to be innovative. We're going to take big risks. So let's get together and have an innovation offsite. We're going to have an innovation incubator group. And as part of that group, we're going to sit down and have a big brainstorming meeting where there's no limitations. And invariably, when you set up that kind of stakes and get people in a room, make the canvas blank, people get inhibited. There's so much pressure now in trying to come up with an idea, trying to have that big insight that nothing happens. So people who teach creative thinking, it's something I've done. I taught a course at the University of Washington, creative thinking. This is the last place you want to go. Much more useful place is to think about problems. To say, hey, what problems are there that we can deal with? What problem are we going to try to solve? Want to solve a problem in a particular industry? Great. What part of that industry? What are the biggest problems our industry has? Okay, let's pick one of those problems. Who's most seriously affected by that problem? Great, let's find out what their issues are. What is it they're trying to do? You want to break it down until you have a tangible problem that's interesting and important and possibly really hard to solve. And that's where you start. You talk about problems. Now, the history portion of my 10 minutes involves Edison. We like to talk about Thomas Edison. There's a reason why the light bulb was the icon for innovation. It's because it was seen as such a breakthrough in the late 1800s, and all of a sudden, you were now able to pull all-nighters because the lights would be on past dusk. Edison should be credited for all the hackers who stay up late at night. He's the guy that made the all-nighter possible. Now, his approach to thinking about problems is much like what I'm describing. He was not the first guy to invent a light bulb. He gets credit for it because he was the most successful, but he's not the first guy. And in fact, the reason why he was so successful had to do with the way he thought about problems. Instead of saying, hey, how do I make a light bulb that works? He said, you know what? Let's assume for a second I can figure out the light bulb problem. Then what do? There's no power in people's homes. There's no electricity yet. All right, so we got to make a light bulb. Let's assume we can do that. Then we got to put wiring in the house to get through the wire to the light bulb. Great. Then we need wires in the streets. Because how's the power going to get to the houses? Okay, then we need a power plant. So he's asking questions about the problem before he did any invention, before he started hacking or writing code. He said, look, there's got to be a smarter way to think about the problem. He thought about the problem in a different way than almost all the other people who were inventing light bulbs did at the time. And that has a lot to do with why he was so successful. He thought about the problem in a different way. There's another interesting thing that comes up when we look at the history of innovation is that often the problem that the inventor was trying to solve is not what we think it is now in the present. And in this community, we talk about democratizing information. We talk about making information free. And the patron saint of that is Gutenberg. He was the publisher who made the printing press that was used to print Bibles and changed, basically helped promote the whole Renaissance. That whole thing happened because of Gutenberg's work. Now, had you met Gutenberg in the late 1400s and had a conversation with him, he would not be talking about these big words, breakthrough, revolution, democratization. He was a much simpler guy. He was a guy who was trying to make a living. He had a high-minded idea of what a good book looked like. He wanted to print those kinds of books, and he set about trying to do that. And the fact that he had to improve the printing press technology of the day to achieve that was sort of a side effect. He just wanted to make good books. And in fact, not many books were written about him in his own day. He was not that famous. It was not seen as that big a deal until much later, until much more time had gone by. Sometimes it works the other way. And instead of having a problem to solve, you have a solution, but you're not sure what it's for. This is sort of the technologist's lament, that we end up with these technologies that we're convinced are so cool, but we can't find anybody that actually really needs it for something. And sometimes that happens and it can work out, and the Post-it note's a great example of this. The Post-it note was sort of a failed experiment. They were trying to make a kind of glue. They ended up with a glue that didn't stick very well. And the two inventors, Fry and Spencer, or Stevens, those two guys said, you know what? This has got to be good for something. We're just not sure what. So they kept it around, but asked the question, what problem does this solve? Hey, you look like you got a problem. Does this solve your problem? No. I'm going to go over here and try this. Oh, no. Okay. I'm going to keep revising the glue, but I'm going to look for a solution, look for a way to match a problem to the solution. And that's where they eventually found someone who needed something. They needed the ability to put notes on paper they didn't want to damage, and they had a problem that matched their solution. The problem though that I'm really interested about at this conference is sometimes we forget the need to find a real solution. And we forget the need to find a real problem. We're so proud of the technology that we've made, the power of what we've made, that we forget that in order to really to change the world, to have a positive effect on the world, it has to be matched up with a problem. So I saw this yesterday. This is the world's most powerful flashlight. The world's most powerful flashlight. It's so powerful that if you put it on a piece of paper, in seconds, it will burst into flames. World's most powerful flashlight, that's how they brand it. Does anyone here need the world's most powerful flashlight? Now, the only reason I could think of is there's got to be some kind of phobia of matches or something, and people are afraid of lighters, I don't know. But that's how they brand this thing, and unfortunately, technologists are prone to this kind of thinking. We get so obsessed and so convinced of how important our thing is because we like it. So these guys talk about lumens, the wattage, all these technological components that are interesting and took a lot of hard work to build. But the truth is, there's not a lot of problems that this thing is going to solve. So the thing I want to leave you with today is to think about problems and solutions. There's so much potential for what can be done, but that potential is only possible if these things are actually applied to problems. So when you're going around today and you see social media X, you see social media Y, and all these buzzwords thrown around as if that actually represented a problem, ask the question, what problem are you trying to solve? Is this actually a problem I can go back and is going to make my life better, my customers' lives better? If they say yes, then you say, hey, that means you're innovating. They say no, then you say you can't use the word innovation. Thank you very much. Thank you.